Hello, dear friends. I'm Ayeshe. Welcome to Bodhicitta Dakini Monastery Online. I've been asked to talk about the Bodhgaya temple and its spiritual significance, especially at this time. So, anyone who's ever gone to Bodhgaya comes away inspired and moved by the profound sense of holiness and peace at this foremost of pilgrimage places for Buddhists in Bodhgaya in Bihar state in northern India. The Buddha attained enlightenment under the Bodhi tree there 2,600 years ago, and it's probably the most holy place. From the 3rd century, King Ashoka put a pillar and a shrine under the Bodhi tree as a place for Buddhists to do pilgrimage. In the times of early Buddhism, Buddha was not represented by statues. The Buddha was represented by an empty throne, a Bodhi tree, his feet, or a Dharma wheel. A wheel being something that takes you from one place to another, and the 8-spoke Dharma wheel representing the Eightfold Noble Path and a place of starting from ignorance leading to awakening. That's why Buddhists use the 8-spoked Dharma wheel as their symbol. And the current building there is from the 5th to the 6th century. There are 4 Buddhist places of pilgrimage where the Buddha said you could walk in his footsteps and feel the significance of his life and try to emulate his awakening. The first place is Lumbini in Nepal, where he was born, just across the border. The second place is Bodhgaya, where he attained enlightenment. The third place is Sarnath in Varanasi, which is about a 5-hour train trip from Bodhgaya. Where there is a very big, beautiful stupa there and a garden commemorating where he gave his first Dharma talk to his 5 disciples. And then Kushinagar, where he passed away, which is also in the state of UP in northern India. The beautiful thing about Bodhgaya is it's really ecumenical. You can really see Buddhists from all different traditions meditating together peacefully, people from all different Buddhist countries like Burma, Sri Lanka, Tibet, Mongolia, China, Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, and Western Buddhists, Japan, Korea, etc., in their traditional clothes, doing the puja, the worship of the Buddha, not because he's a god, but because he is an archetype of awakening that we can all become. Wearing their traditional clothes, chanting in Pali or Sanskrit or in their own native language. And everybody's just, filled with inspiration and sharing their mutual faith and inspiration in this most amazing of Buddhist leaders, of Buddhist spiritual teachers and gurus. Around Bodhgaya are scattered other places of profound significance, like the great Buddhist University of Nalanda. And the ruins are really extensive over many acres. And that is a one-day drive, a few hours drive from Bodhgaya. Dungeshwari, or otherwise known as Mahakala Cave, is where the Buddha crossed the Niranjana River and practiced tapasya, or asceticism, for many years before attaining awakening. He tried to starve his body, so he was so thin that he could put his hand on his stomach and touch his spine. And he was so weak that he almost fell into the river. And then when he finally managed to pull himself out of the river, a girl who was worshipping the forest spirits called Sujata was moved by his weakness and offered him some kheer or milk rice, sweet rice. And that's when he realized that starving the body was not the way to awakening, and he followed the Madhyamag, the middle path between the extremes of asceticism and hedonism, which is the life he'd lived as a prince. So all of these places you can walk in the Buddhist footsteps. You can see, village people living much as they did thousands of years ago in simple mud huts, the women in their beautiful colored saris. And a wonderful book that you can read as a companion to your pilgrimage, whether it's virtual or in person, is Old Path, White Clouds by Thich Nhat Hanh. And you can walk along to each sacred place, like the Sujata's stupa, which is near the village of Sujata, where the Buddha realized he needed to give up this extreme form of self-torture he'd been practicing. Because if the body is weak, the mind can't find peace. And that the body and mind are connected. So the body needs to be treated with respect, but not hedonism, not indulgence. And another place of profound significance is Vulture's Peak or Gridakutta, which is a beautiful mountain also near Nalanda. You can do it all in one day, like Nalanda, Vulture's Peak, and also Venuvan or Jetavana Monastery, Bamboo Forest Monastery, where the Buddha spent many rainy seasons teaching to the monks. On Vulture's Peak, there is a cave of where the Buddha's main disciples like Shariputra, Mahamoggallana, and others practiced as well. But Vulture's Peak is also really significant for Mahayana Buddhists and Vajrayana Buddhists because they believe it was the place where the Buddha did the second turning of the wheel, which is the teachings on emptiness, the Prajnaparamita Sutta of dependent origination. So, for many hundreds of years, Bodhgaya was... Sorry, this is my dog begging for my attention. For many hundreds of years, Bodhgaya was a place where all Buddhists came. And a vast portion of India, especially under the rulership of King Ashoka and the Gupta kings, was Buddhist. There's Buddhist monuments all over India, Buddhist caves, as far away as what was once a tribal land in Madhya Pradesh. So it's, it would not be an overstretch to say that 40 to 50 to 60% of India was at one time Buddhist. The disappearance of Buddhism in India is another sad stage in the history of Buddhism. And it wasn't just the Muslim invasions that destroyed Nalanda that led to the decline of Buddhism. It was a complex mix of things. First and foremost, the Buddha was anti-caste and accepted people from the lowest to the highest caste, and said one is not noble by one's birth, but by one's actions. And he said, we don't need to follow rites and rituals. We should seek truth for ourselves. And we should seek wisdom within ourselves. And we don't need an intermediary for the sacred like a Brahmin. And that meant that the Brahmin caste had no livelihood under Buddhism. And therefore Buddhism was a threat to Brahmanism. So the Brahmins, did everything they could to try and diminish Buddhism. And eventually said that Buddhism is part of Hinduism and Buddha is an incarnation of their god Vishnu. But Buddhists don't accept this. There is no God in Buddhism. There is no caste in Buddhism. And, so anyone who's actually studied Buddhism knows that Buddha is not an incarnation of Vishnu. It's unfortunate that something so profound as Buddhism disappeared from India. Another factor was that Buddhism was largely championed by the merchant class because they didn't like all the sacrifices that were extremely costly, and they were a more upwardly mobile metropolitan community. So they took Buddhism down the Silk Road and also via the Golden Road, which was across the Arabian Sea when they traded. Monks would go as missionaries. And also Ashoka set up monasteries all over his domain, which was from Afghanistan to the Deccan, and it traveled down the Silk Road to China and even as far as Greece. As the northern India reverted back because of wars and many factors, reverted back to around Bodhgaya to a more peasant community, the monks remained in the monasteries and became, kind of scholars in an ivory tower, and disengaged because they were relying on royal patronage. They were a little bit disengaged from the peasants and the simple folk, and they didn't do their births, deaths, and marriages rituals anymore, which was a great shame, because that meant that when the merchant class diminished and the peasant class increased, that Buddhism also decreased because the monks lost touch with the lay community, the simple folk, and the Brahmins replaced them as, ritual keepers, half keepers of temples and so on. But there is also some speculation that Buddhism was violently expelled in some places in the Himalayas and other places, as well as the Mughal invasion down through Afghanistan and Kashmir. They were, they converted to the ruler's new religion of Islam to curry favor with the king and the rulers. But it was also under threat of death that some Buddhists were forced to convert to Islam. By the 12th or 13th or 1400s, Buddhism, like Bodhgaya, had declined. And also the Buddhist monks themselves kept it dividing into smaller and smaller communities, which also confused people and started, the emergence of Vajrayana Buddhism. Also, there was a kind of a dialogue between Tantric Hinduism and Tantric Buddhism, which might have confused some less educated people who couldn't tell the difference between the two religions. There is definitely some similarities between Vajrayana Buddhism and Tantric Hinduism, but there is also some significant differences, such as Buddhism doesn't believe in a soul. Buddhism believes only in a mind stream that reincarnates until liberation, or that takes rebirth, I should say, and that there is no creator God in Buddhism. And the Vajrayana deities that Tantric Buddhists meditate on are not gods, but are an archetype of something that we ourselves can become. Whereas in Hinduism, the tantric deities are considered an eternal god, and the soul or Atman is a core principle of their system of beliefs. So for all these reasons, Buddhism unfortunately declined in India. So by around 1400s, 1300s, Bodhgaya was empty, and, well, there weren't many Buddhists left except Buddhists that came from other countries. The Burmese rulers tried to care for the temple and revive it, but ultimately the local people had reverted to Bhakti Hinduism and Islam. So the Bodhgaya temple largely fell into disrepair until the 1880s, when the British soldier and anthropologist, Alexander Cunningham, just rediscovered it and realized its significance, and then set about restoring all the holy sites like Sanchi Kushinagar, Takshila, and that was another Buddhist university, as well as Bodhgaya. Another person who was really important in the revival of Buddhism in India, which remained a marginal religion. Only 2% of Indians are Buddhist, mostly Himalayans, people from the Barua community in Bengal as well. So was Anagarika Dhammapala, who lived from 1864 till 1933. He was an engaged Buddhist, like a missionary, who was determined to revive Buddhism in India. He was anti-caste. He was invested in social justice, and that is why he started Buddhist schools. He started the Mahabodhi Society. He started trying to educate poor Indians about their Buddhist history and Indian Buddhist heritage. He started numerous viharas and made efforts to break down caste and to remove Brahmins from the control of the Mahabodhi temple, because obviously Hindus have their own holy temples, like the Golden Temple in Varanasi, and holy places in Vrindavan and all over India. And he actually said that he would be reborn again in India to help revive the Dhamma. So yeah, I mean, I think it's really hard to describe the profound peace and beauty and blessings of a holy place. But when you go there and you just see people offering so much devotion, doing acts of charity, doing meditation, giving Dhamma teachings, doing extensive ritual offerings like the Tibetans who do their monlams or prayer festivals there, the hundreds of pilgrims doing 100,000 prostrations, and the harmony between all the Buddhist communities that come there, as well as the Indian Buddhists like the Ambedkarites who come from Maharashtra in their white and blue clothes and meditate, the Vipassana practitioners, the Burmese who come. It's just a very inspiring, peaceful, blessed place where one can tangibly sense the profound journey of a man who started out as a prince, renounced everything, a kingdom, an entire kingdom, a loving family, not to abdicate responsibility, but to seek for the benefit of all sentient beings, who was truly the Prince of Peace, and who found awakening and gave the Eightfold Noble Path and the Four Noble Truths that led all beings to awakening. Not all beings, I should say, but thousands, millions of Buddhists throughout history who have attained awakening are walking the road to awakening, non-violence, and compassion. So if you can in your life make a pilgrimage, to do so is wonderful. And if you can't, finding that sacred place of pilgrimage inside yourself, which is ultimately the most important pilgrimage Buddhists will make in this life. One doesn't have to be a Buddhist to benefit from the teachings of the Buddha, but going to this holy place is a profound, blessed experience. And, going on pilgrimage, getting inspiration, developing a daily practice, meeting in community is a really important part of a spiritual path. A spiritual path, even Buddhism, is not just the pursuit of an individual, but is the act of building community, building solidarity, building compassionate communities of awakening, and practicing generosity and receiving blessings, making good karma. All of these things are part of an integrated whole that is the Buddhist path. So take care, Namo Buddhaya, and I guess I'll see you next time with my next Dhamma talk. Take care. And if you have any ideas about topics that you would like to hear about in Dhamma talks, let me know. Take care.